We've got Blackie Lawless in the studio with us this afternoon. That's a pretty appropriate song, isn't it? The Torture Never Stops. Because
it depends on where you're at.
going on. Another part of your act involves strapping a woman on a rack. Apparently.
That's exactly what I had in mind. You ought to talk to her. Now, sometimes she's a little speechless after it's over.
You've had a lot of criticism for this, though, haven't you? Especially from women's groups in America.
Yeah, we originally had the NOW organization start to come down on us.
Now, what's that stand for?
The NOW organization is the National Organization of Women in America, and they are a very, very strong group. Especially, they're very influential at, say, like right now when there's a presidential election going on and things like that. They influence the candidates very heavily. So they were giving us a lot of heat, and they said, well, you know, why are you doing this and all that? And at the time, we had most of our audience, I'd say about 85% was male. So we didn't figure they wanted to see a guy strung up on the rack, especially she's only wearing a loincloth. So we figured, well, we give them something to look at. So they came after us, and they said, why don't you do this? I said, listen, if we put a guy up on the rack, then the gay movement will probably come after us. So what we did to shut them up is we cut the backside out of our trousers, and two things happened. They shut up because it wasn't like bringing somebody else on the stage, you know, like another guy and doing something to him. We did it to ourselves. So like I said, two things happened. They shut up, and our audience grew in leaps and bounds because now we're splitting the audience 50-50 down the middle. We got more women out there now, and we know what to do with. So happy.
What about the disadvantage? Surely you have to play with your back to the audience all the time, don't you?
No, not really. I mean, you know, listen, they're going to look at it, and they're going to see from any angle. I mean, they see them out there with binoculars and the whole bit, you know.
Now, I mean, quite obviously, just from the way you're talking, you don't take this seriously, and nothing actually that happens on stage is any worse than you'd see in a sort of tacky horror movie or something like that.
Yeah, right? It's kind of like beauty. It's in the eyes of the beholder, you know. I mean, I don't take it seriously, but then, you know, I'm sure that there's people that are out pulling other atrocities that don't take that seriously either, so...
Are you worried, though, that some people might take it seriously?
I'm not worried about it. I mean, we've had a lot of people take it seriously and things like that, but I look at it like rock and roll was meant to be fun, and a lot of people have tried to hang me for doing things like this, and I said, I'm not taking that rap. Me to take that rap is like blaming Jodie Foster for trying to shoot President Reagan. I mean, it's by proxy, and there are certain people out there that are accidents that are looking for a place to happen, and I'm not going to be the convenience for somebody else. People should be glad that we're doing this kind of show, because we're exhausting kids. We're creating catharsis out there. They're so exhausted by the time they leave the show, at least they're not going to be out stealing people's hubcaps when the show's over.
I tell you what I do love, actually, this biography of you that you've sent out. Now, I'd like to buy the film rights for this now, actually, because it's a good story. I don't believe half of it. I mean, I don't believe, for example, that you met your guitarist when he appeared nude in a magazine, a pin-up magazine. I don't believe it.
If you knew the guitar player, you would.
Is it true? I mean, is this actually true?
Well, we call this guy, he's 6'5", and he's this towering blonde figure. He looks like a Greek god. He's got blonde hair down to his waist. His name is Chris Holmes, and his nickname is Chewie. We call him Chewie because he looked like Chewbacca out of Star Wars.
That big as well.
Yeah, really, you know, I mean, whenever you start talking to him about certain things, he goes, like that. So I was looking in a magazine. I was with a drummer at the time who's now playing Fire and Butterfly. And there's a magazine in America called Hustler, and there's a section in there called Beaver Hunt, and what it is this real grotesque, really totally tasteless section of the magazine where people send in Polaroids of their wives or girlfriends or whatever, and they have one section that is for women only. It's one little portion of one of the corners. And so we were looking for a guitar player at the time, and oddly enough, where we were living in Los Angeles, the motels lived like 2 doors down from us. So the guitar player from the motels, he comes down one day, and I'm looking at this magazine, and I see this picture of this guy, and I told the drummer, I said, look at this. I said, I believe this is this guy. Now, that's a nationwide magazine. What's the chances that the guy's going to live in L.A.? So he said, the guitar player comes down, and he looks and he goes, I know that guy. And I looked at him and I said, you got to be kidding. He goes, no. He says, he's a guitar player. He says, he's actually quite good. He says, you want me to try to get in touch with him? I says, and I still didn't believe it. So he knew a girl that knew how to get in touch with him. So about 2 or 3 days. Right. So about 2 or 3 days later, he calls up, and the drummer talks to him on the phone. And he says, how tall are you? He says, well, I'm 6'5". He says, how long is your hair? He goes, well, it's past my shoulders. He says, you got any pimples? He says, no. He goes, come on down.
Can he wear the trousers? Can he wear... It's a strange background you've had, though, musically, Blackie, because I know you played with the New York Dolls for a while.
For about 10 minutes.
What was that like?
Yeah,
that must have been strange.
Well, let's put it this way. It's the only band I ever knew that could sit in an airplane terminal and miss 5 planes right in a row. So that, you know, there's one guy's drinking 13 quarts of Colt 45 a day, and that's just during the daytime. And then he's drinking hard alcohol at night. That's his way of disciplining himself. So that ought to tell you right there what they were like.
I'm sure W.A.S.P won't go the same way. I mean, how far is this going to go? How far can you take this, do you think?
Well, we got a song. It's the third song on the first side. It's called The Flame. And the first line goes, give me a ticket on a jet airplane, I'm going to take it. I live my life in the fast lane, the only way to make it. So I like to think that we're getting about as close to the edge as you can without going off. I mean, as far as Chris goes, I mean, he's about on his 5th life right now. You're talking about a guy that went off a 100-foot embankment on a motorcycle and crushed 3 vertebrae in his back and was told he would never walk again. And he's out rocking and rolling now. So, you know, people with rather iron wills, shall we say.
Blackie Lawless, thanks for coming in. Good luck with the W.A.S.P tour. We'll see if you actually manage to get to play anywhere without more
Really,
complaints.
I think we're going to be the first band in history to ever go triple platinum without ever playing a gig.
We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Richard.
Thanks a lot.